Here's homework help for lesson number 6. You'll be gathering up images and doing a little bit of research to see what other people out there in the wide world have done for book covers. And once you have all those together, I would recommend opening up your images and importing them into your document file. Now, the very first thing is to place the most important dominant image and get it sized and placed the way you want it. And then I would bring in the next most important image, and remember to lower the opacity while you're placing that. It'll help you figure out its relation to the other elements, and then you would place and size and whatever you need to. Now, instead of using your eraser to get rid of the hard edges, you need to use layer masks. This assignment is all about using layer masks and blend modes. So you would throw a layer mask on there by clicking on the layer mask button and then masking out any of the areas that you don't want to see with black paint. And you have to be on your layer mask to do that. And this is just really rough. I certainly want you to do more than what I'm doing right here. Once you've got your multiple images placed and the layer masks figured out for those, and you can even apply some blend modes to those layers, then you will want to place your type. So here I've got the title and the author name. Sorry, it's getting a little late at night. My brain is starting to stutter. You'd place the title and the author name, and then take a look at it and consider, all right, well, where is it hard to read the words, or where is it difficult to see what's going on? And for example, this author name at the bottom is getting a little bit lost in the building. So I've created a new layer and put a little bit of a white gradient that goes to transparent, and now that word is a lot easier to read. The other thing I did to this copy is put a drop shadow on it, and it's a really subtle thing, and you won't even notice that it's there until I get rid of it. Did you see the difference? It's a really, really subtle thing. So you can do that by double clicking on a layer and clicking on the word drop shadow and adjusting its properties to give it that effect, or you can just create a new layer and paint with a paintbrush a dark color behind some of your type. So now it's looking pretty good. It's time for texture. When you bring in your texture file, it's best to immediately throw a blend mode on it, and you can do that by clicking here and moving down through the blend modes and seeing what works best for your cover. And remember, with blend modes, you can lower the opacity of the layer if you want it to appear a little more subtle. And in this case, I have my layer opacity actually at 100%, and it's set to multiply, and then I threw a layer mask on there and painted away all of the areas that I didn't want to have that full-on texture, so it's really lightly in there. After looking at this for a little while longer, I decided I'd like a little bit more interest in there, something that could tell about the story, and thought, well, I seem to recall reading a book about lighthouses and mysteries, and it involved letters, so I made a type layer. Let's see if I can show you this without it going really spazzy. And just filled it up with some nonsensical lorem ipsum filler type and picked a nice scripty font, and then I added a layer mask to that layer as well and hid all of the areas that I didn't want it covering. And that's pretty much it. When you're done, a really great tip is to actually leave it on your computer screen and walk away for a minute, and then when you come back, pay attention to your first impression, because often that's when we notice that things might not be quite balanced, or maybe the title isn't centered. Speaking of centering, if you want something centered, I'll show you a really quick trick. If you grab your marquee tool, make sure your feather is set to 0, and it's the rectangular marquee tool. You can click and drag to create a rectangle that is just exactly the size between the type and the edge. And then, not holding anything, just clicking in here with my tool, I move it over to the other side and I can see if it's the same size. So that's just sort of a quick visual way to check if whatever you've done is centered. And you can see that none of the type goes right to the edge. Sometimes that is done for stylistic purposes, but mostly if it's not meant to go clear off the edge, it's best to keep it in a little bit so you don't make an uncomfortable tangent. Alrighty, that was probably a little more than I intended to do, but I hope it was helpful. Good luck making your book, and if you run into any big snags, just shoot me an email.